Hi, everyone. Ed Bixby here from the Global Green Burial Alliance, and this is Spotlight Now. Today, I'm here with Susan Greer. Susan has worked for years in marketing at Toronto's top ad agencies and with Gravity Incorporated, a design agency that does work for nonprofit sectors. Susan served on the board of the Green Burial Council and is a member of the Conservation Burial Alliance. She runs the Natural Burial Association. I've known Susan for many years. So welcome, Susan. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Ed. I'm glad to be chatting with you again after all these
Yeah.
years.
No,
Yeah.
it's wonderful to catch up and to find out all the great things that you've been involved with and helping push along to fruition. So for our viewers, why don't we get started by learning a little bit about the Natural Burial Association and how that came to be?
Okay. And well, the Natural Burial Association, or NBA, as I like to call it, was actually created in 2005 by two real trailblazers here in Toronto, um, who were in the publishing industry. Nothing to do with death care at all. And one of them was at a funeral in England, came back, Marianne came back and said, "Oh my God, Michael, there's this thing called natural burial. This is so amazing. We got to do it." And they're just the kind of people that they had get a good idea. They care about the environment. They wanted to do it. So they formed the Natural Burial Association. 2005, kind of like a little bit in a way, I mean, good thing to do, but premature. So it coasted along for a while, but it's just it didn't have there wasn't that need. There wasn't the trailblazers like you that had paved a little bit of a path to make it easy for them. So the organization was dormant. And then it was 2018. I was just listening to the radio, and there was this podcast on natural burial. Like you said in the introduction, I had nothing to do with death care, although I'm very comfortable thinking and talking about death. And then they talked about natural burial. I thought, oh my God, this is such a no-brainer. I'm just going to phone the Urban Planning Department of Toronto. I'm sure they'll be on it in a second. So that was 2018. And now it's 2026. Ugh. Anyway, as anybody who knows anything about trying to launch a natural burial ground, you can imagine my one call to the urban planning department went nowhere quick. And so, but they did give me a lot of ideas. You got to talk to this person, that person, this person, that person. So I had a full-time job, but I was like starting to chip away, thinking, I can't let this go. Like this is such a good idea. Like we gotta have this. You have to have this option in Ontario. So then I happened upon this website, Natural Burial Association. And I just got in touch with Michael, the founder, and he said, "Okay, run it, run with it." So that was kind of neat. That's how I, got involved with so many Americans. You guys have been so friendly and helpful because you are way ahead of Canada in this regard. And started by like first thing first, nobody knew about natural burial. So spreading the word about natural burial, and then barriers would come along that we'd want to fight. Like we have a crazy perpetuity fee in Ontario, 40%. Most of the American cemeteries, it's at most 10, 15%. So like insane stuff. Natural burial should be affordable. Now I won't say fighting, but there's some funeral operators that do not want to offer shroud burial. So I've just reached out to some friendly funeral homes and cemetery operators and put together a video. Tell us your positive experiences with shroud burial in the hopes that, there's no trend where a whole bunch of funeral homes are saying we're not going to do it. So we just take on the various issues as they come along. A big one that I hope that we can talk about, Ed, is grave renewal. That's something that we're doing. And then, while all this was happening, just kind of building awareness, focusing just on Ontario, a province in Canada, along came a benefactor and said, "I'll buy you land for a natural burial ground." And sort of thinking, okay, it's not like we ever thought we'd be in the biz. We're just advocating for this, hoping everybody in the biz does create a natural section. But I would have been quite a schmuck if we'd said no to that. So we're like, okay. So we form a charitable organization. I think the equivalent for you guys is like 501(c)(3), something I hear in meetings a lot. So we formed that, and we last year purchased land, 95 acres, about 2 hours north of Toronto. Beautiful. Um, there's two what were cash crop fields, and we're going to convert them to wildflower meadows. And then there's an area closer to the road where the barn was. It was a dairy barn. We're converting that into office space and a gathering spot. And then trying to, of course, do everything as eco-friendly as we can. There's a manure pit, and that's been converted to the storage equipment area, which will be underground, for the mini excavator and all that stuff. So those are the plans that are underway. Um, I'll say again, like it's one of the difficulties is America just has that beautiful get things done spirit, and I don't think you have the roadblocks, aka bureaucracy, that we have in Canada. So it's been super, super hard. All the approvals that we need, hundreds of thousands of dollars that have gone into just getting the approval for rezoning, which we just got over a month ago. So it's harder than when I, attend CBA webinars or any other webinar, and I think, oh, the Americans make it sound so easy. But it's on the other hand, without knowing what I have learned through all of the generosity of the Americans, I would be nowhere. So that's good. And I mean, one of the most beautiful things I've learned is that, well, I think when I heard about this, I was motivated because of the environment and cremation not being good. But what I've come to learn so humbly and so beautiful is that this is not just for tree huggers. I don't even talk about the environmental benefits of natural burial anymore. I think it's so much more than that. People like it because of its simplicity. They like it because it's giving back to nature, the reciprocity, the idea that we've been fed by the earth in life and then in death we can give back, feed the earth back. And so the reciprocity is a big thing. From a faith perspective, both the Christian and Judaic values and Muslim values, natural burial aligns with those values. And people are comforted thinking that their final resting place is going to be in nature, or they there's just so many reasons beyond the environment why it's compelling to people. And so that's really nice too. I kind of, I don't, it motivates me that it's not just an environmental movement. It's so much more than that. And that's why I'm kind of a stickler slash pain in the butt, because I always, if it's anyone who's working with me, I correct them if they say green burial. I think that natural burial is a much better description because, first of all, it is natural. But I think also green denotes something that's environmental. And this is, as I was just saying, is so much more than environmental movement. It's about simplicity. It's about not having an industrial process. It's natural. And so that's why and I've even had people write in and say, thanks for calling it natural, not green. So there's my little lecture for the day, Ed.
Well, you've touched on so many things, and a lot of the questions that I was going to ask actually pertain to some of the stuff you said, but you've hit the nail on the head, and I'll point out a few of the things to the viewers that, like you had said, Susan, you know, the environmental aspect is a wonderful benefit, but at the end of the day, the memorialization, the ability to participate, to do as we've done since the dawn of time, to care for our loved ones in death, that's within our DNA. That's really who we are. We just lost touch with who we were and how we could deal with that. And by bringing yourself, into the process brings you closer to death and dying, but you're far less afraid of it because you're just going back to the earth as you've come. So I think, you mentioned religion. What's kind of ironic is in life, we can disagree, religiously, let's say, but in death, we can lay side by side. And I think it's creating an opportunity for tolerance, more tolerance in life, where people look at it and say, we're all human beings, no matter what, we can disagree, but at the end of the day, we're all part of the same fabric. Uh, you know, what's really exciting about what you had said about, you creating this 95, or getting the opportunity to create this 95-acre property is that you're leading the way. And what's funny is people typically are only afraid of what they don't understand, let's say. And by you creating this opportunity, what's kind of really unique is I think the floodgates may open to some of those properties who may not have been as receptive, now that they see someone has taken the bull by the horns and said, hey, listen, we're going to create a space, and you'll have this natural space where maybe we'll have some hybrid models pop up in your area. I mean, at the moment, of course, Ontario is a site of immense natural beauty. We know that natural burial speaks for itself, in Canada. I would imagine it has to fit into the culture and lifestyle. Could you tell us a little bit about, like, is there any availability in Ontario now for others other than the one that you're going to create?
Yeah, sure. Well, this is where the vocab all over the movement is there's no agreement. So I'll use my definitions. I describe hybrids as being those sections that are eked out of the conventional cemeteries. So they can be as small as a quarter acre or up to 2 acres in the case of Ontario. And those are hybrids. So run by, attached to conventional cemeteries, you're going to see the tombstones from the natural burial section. And then there are the dedicated sites. Some people refer them to standalone, but again, we have an opportunity to put positive words out there. And standalone is not a nice word, but dedicated is a beautiful word. So dedicated natural burial grounds, those are the ones that are all over the United States, so many in the UK. There's one modern day one open to the public in Salt Spring Island in British Columbia. And those are what we're creating in Simcoe County, where it's independently owned, although it doesn't need to be, but it happens ours is. It's just nature. There's no attachment to the cemetery. There's no tombstones anywhere. The whole thing is a natural burial ground. And that's kind of neat too, because it's not one of the official tenets. Again, there's no rules, but there's some tenets for natural burial. And one of the unofficial tenets is that the cemetery operators are more involved with the family at the time of interment. And I always, if I can, I remember once being on a webinar with JC, of course, the lovely cemetery operator at Larkspur in Tennessee, and he talked about a family came to make arrangements because their mother had died, and he said, would you like to be involved in the burial of your mom, digging the grave, decorating the grave, lowering your mother, filling in the grave? And the kids were like, oh, no, 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 we're just here because mom liked nature. And he knew better. And they arrive with their mother, and he has the shovels laid out, and he has whatever it was, like cedar boughs or everything else. And they get there in the context of seeing their mother as part of the cycle of life, the web of life. And they get their hands dirty, they get involved. And of course, they're so grateful to JC after. And so that's one of the neat things about the opportunity, at least for the dedicated natural burial grounds, is to be involved in that respect. So this will be the first dedicated site, but there are at least a dozen hybrids in Ontario, and some, scattered across Canada there are. But all the lovely, lovely dedicated natural burial grounds that are flourishing in the United States, we have a lot of catch up to do for sure.
Well, and like I had said, I think your new project probably will inspire some growth, and hopefully, maybe the Natural Burial Association can work with that bureaucracy when it comes to that 40% fee, because that does seem a bit onerous for anyone to contend with. I mean, I understand that they probably really are, they would really like to see the perpetuity, the maintenance continue, but 40% seems to be a tall order to encourage a natural burial opposed to, let's say, direct cremation. And we know that that's not the best for the environment. So hopefully,
Yeah.
your advocacy can do that. And, you know, with the Natural Burial Association, we know a little bit about the project you're working on. Do you guys offer any opportunities when it comes to education or community involvement that people on the viewing this today might be able to, become part of what you're doing?
You know what? Uh, we need to um, we need to expand the number of hours in a day because we're a small operation. And now we're launching a site, and we still have MBA, which should be doing all the education work. So we do have people sign up on our website, and then twice a year we offer a webinar, how to plan a green goodbye, because so many people out there, they are intimidated, understandably, and confused by all the end of life options. And it's the same across North America. The funeral directors, funeral home have their role, and the cemeteries have their role. And especially when somebody's contemplating natural burial, they seem to conflate them. And so that helps if we really explain, well, there's this role is performed by this person, or you can have it do it yourself as a family, or this role is this person. So um, there's that we offer that webinar twice a year. Although sometimes we have had to miss it, but yeah, that's the intent. But if I can do one plug for something that we're working on, I think I mentioned to you before we were on camera, we're putting together a video on shroud burials, which is just B2B, business to business. This is not intended for the public, but it goes into a lot of detail from these very passionate funeral directors on how to prepare a body for shroud burial, how to wrap a shroud, how to carry a shroud, the board that goes underneath, that kind of thing, in the hopes that those funeral homes that are hesitant to offer it will get on board, like knowing how embraced it is by so many people who want natural burial but choose to have a shroud burial. And then the other thing that we're really advocating for is grave renewal. Because and by grave renewal, I'll use our definition, which we got from the UK, called lift and deepen. So the idea is that after, I'll just arbitrarily say 50 years, the grave is opened, and if there are any remains, they're gathered together like a femur or part of the skull, and they're gathered together and then they're dug deeper. So it's lovely to think that that person never leaves the grave. They're always there, but they're dug deeper. There's questions, and it would have to be on each cemetery's bylaws. What happens to, say, the hip replacement? Does the titanium hip go off for recycling, or is that part of that person and is also buried? And um, and then that grave can be prepared for the next person. And so that means that cemeteries will always be sustainable. And it's a unique thing that we have in North America, where people think they have they think they do. They have right to that, say, 8x3 plot in perpetuity, undisturbed. Nobody joins them. And that's not like, it's just not sustainable. So that's something that we're really working on, is yeah, the idea that grave renewal will happen. So we've been talking to people. There's a lovely in New South Wales and in some parts of Australia, it's legislated that you have to repurpose the graves. So we'd like to, legal barriers permitting, because they've found like a legal workaround until they fix the legislature. But we'd like to be able to offer term burial on this new site that we're going to launch. And I believe it's Panorama that we would be borrowing a page from their book, where they offer individuals, would you like to have this, grave, and I'm paraphrasing now, all to yourself forever, or would you like to share it? And apparently it's like, well, the majority of people, so we're like 60% or 80% at Panorama, will say, sure, I'd be happy to share it. So that's a great thing, because, land's finite. So we're really excited about that project. And it's great that that's got like a groundswelling. Of course, in UK, like they're having to start to do it, and Australia is already on board. And you've got some cemeteries in the US that it's being employed. So that's something exciting, I think.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I would say to anyone watching this that if you're in the Ontario area or beyond, and you can help the Natural Burial Association achieve this goal and have some information that might be useful to Susan and others, please share it. I mean, that's it's a wonderful idea. And I can just make mention of the United States and how things operate here. What's kind of ironic is it is totally legal to do so. It really comes down to the rules and regulations of the cemetery itself, and then the legal device concerning the reuse of the grave. If the person is signing a document saying that they are willing and they want to have the grave reused, they can do that. This is the one thing that I can say to the operators in the United States. You had mentioned removing the bones and digging them deeper. So here in the United States, and I'm not sure about Canada, if you do disinter, there is the
Mhm.
requirement of a disinterment permit.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so you definitely need to have that legal instrument stating that this is allowable, so that in the future it can be done. But
But that's
it,
why the model that we're using is no remains leave that grave. Now, of course, it's three
Right.
and a half feet deep, so not too hard for anybody to get in there and dig. So as
Correct.
long as those remains stay there, because the other thing is like we're so big on we want this to be affordable. And if you have laws so that, yeah, it gets to the end, it's considered a disinterment, and then you've got who knows who you might need to have. Like some bylaws, it might be that there's a funeral director has to be there, or the medical officer of health. Ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. Who's paying for that? The consumer. So then it's not viable. But if we can
Right.
do it such that, I mean, Australia, they have cemetery operators that are doing it, and they are doing it with conventional cemeteries. So it's sometimes a little harder what they're seeing when they dig up than compared to a natural burial where so much of the decomposition would have taken place. And there's an honorarium for them to do that, but it's on a volunteer basis. So like neat ways of tackling this are happening around the world.
Oh, absolutely. There's always a workaround, but not in a way that you're trying to do it, where you're trying not to follow the rules. But,
Yeah.
at the end
Yeah.
of the day, it's a great idea. And I think it's a good idea for you and for the world itself. And it is happening already. So it's a great point. And kudos to you guys for wanting to make that part of your vision and your future plan. And, with that being said, we talked a little bit about the project. What would your expected timeline be, do you think, before maybe you're open? And with that being said, what would you like to see happen maybe? How would you like to imagine that property in the next, in 5 or 10 years from now?
Mm. Um, Good question. Um, we hope so. Right now it's March 2026. I think I'm unrealistic to think that we're going to launch this summer, just because of all the building permit approvals that we would need. So probably it's going to launch in 2028. And the other reason it's prudent to take our time is that the field was used for as cash crop with herbicides for to feed the cattle. And so there's a lot of undesirable weeds on the property. And it can take at least a year, if not two, to get rid of all the weeds that come up, and the weeds that are underground. You have to like keep on tilling it until you've got rid of all the weeds. And if you don't take that time up front to do it properly, is what I hear. I'm not an ecologist, but it seems to be unanimous that you're really smart to take the time up front to get rid of the invasives, get rid of the unwanted weeds, and then it's going to be easier in the long run when you plant the desirable wildflower seeds. Of course, half of those are considered weeds too, but they're they're the desirable weeds, and that's with a native grass mix. So that's neat, and that like we can't rush Mother Nature on that one, so that's going to take its time. And then meantime, it's finding, I mean, this is like finding the staff that will be running this. And that I think of again, I go back to the American Trailblazers who are doing it now. Like the people that run these organizations is like a calling. And there's so much of skill that is required, empathy and love of nature and being able to get out and get your hands dirty and help, dig a grave, but being in the office and doing all the administrative work, no matter where we are, US or Canada, you've got all of that filing and reporting that's got to be done. It's the death care sector and the organization. And it's a stressful, complicated industry with like zero margin for error. So I think like one of the things that will keep me awake at night is like, where are the beautiful people that we are going to run this? Like thinking like, I could list off all of the people, the Freddies and Emilys and JCs of the world that are just like so, we need cloned for all the new natural burial grounds that are launching everywhere. So that's a big challenge.
Well, and you know what's interesting, Susan, is, and I think I know the answer to this, and you may as well. Funny enough, the people that will be there for you probably aren't even part of the industry at the moment and have no clue that they will be part of something so special as what you're creating. Because it really
Yeah,
feels as if 99% of all of us who got involved in this natural burial movement really truly came from a completely different world. We just found a calling. So
exactly. Yeah.
I'm,
It is a calling.
I'm
It is a
sure
calling.
you will. No, absolutely. And you know what? Patience is a virtue. So I can appreciate you guys taking your time and doing it right. There's no rush. It needs to be done correctly, and Mother Nature does need its time. So
Mhm.
you're doing the right thing there. So that's all exciting. It'll be here before you know it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I hope
And
so. And we're going to need the time. Like we're going to need the time over the winter. We're absolutely determined to offer winter burials. And with all of the things that we had to think about, purchasing the land, one that we didn't is are we or are we not in a snow belt? So we're in a snow belt. So it can have like feet and feet and feet of snow in the winter. And we're not going to have tombstones. It's all going to be GPS to help, determine where the graves are. And again, no margin for error. So we're going to want a winter where we're just practicing with that snow. How are we going to do it? All the different options for winter burial. Are we digging the graves in advance? Are we, mapping, just doing some little mapping? Are whatever, all the various options. Are we just heating them at the time? Do we have the special equipment on the mini excavator? All of those things. There's going to be a lot of run a show to at all the different seasons, the mucky spring season, yeah, I'll hear like Laura and Hart and at Hartwitter, Freddie, and I'm just like, oh, they don't have the problems we have. They don't have winter. So
oh yeah,
yeah.
that's spring thaw, and I'll tell you, in the Northeast, we had quite a winter this year, and
Mm,
it
yeah.
can go away because it can be definitely a pain in the butt. That's for sure. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to spring. Well, as we come to the end of our interview, and it's wonderful to hear all the great things that you're doing there in Ontario. I think what the viewers might like to know is, could you paint a little picture of what you think, or what you would hope future end of life care in Ontario might look like in 15 to 20 years? Where would you like to see this movement land once you get through the bureaucracy and you've got the property open? Where would you like to see the future of it there?
I guess there's two things that I would hope for. I think seeing how much natural burial resonates with people, I would love for it to become a household name, an option that's available everywhere and everybody knows about it and the option is available to them and that it's affordable. That's something that's important to me. And then I guess is that like you were mentioning earlier, Ed, that the people that are in this natural burial movement now, they weren't they didn't probably go to they didn't think that they were going to do that when they started their career. They just landed on it because of some passion or they were moved because they went to a natural burial. And I feel really privileged that I am working in this sector now. I mean, even though I'm just a volunteer, but because there is something really rewarding and comforting and precious in life about being cognizant of death all the time. It does make, I believe, my life richer. Just knowing because I'm working with it all the time. So, and I think our society has kind of got away from that. Like across North America, I think we've kind of like pushed death off and there's so much of this death of like, direct cremation. Somebody dies, they die in a hospital, 2 weeks later you get some ashes and there's just there's it's such an important milestone in life and I think there's a lot of disconnection to death. And I think we'd be healthier if we thought about it more and talked about it more and we're fearless about it.
I think it's a wonderful sentiment, and I will tell you this, and I agree with you 100%. Like I had mentioned, to experience a natural burial is to understand one, and to experience that brings you closer to death in a way that where it's not scary, where you're not afraid to talk about it, and you really find a little bit of let's say, I don't know, I don't use the word solace, but you find a way to say that this is okay. I mean, I can't live forever, and I'm okay with it. And I don't think too many people want to feel that way, but I think once you reach that space, you are, and I think you can live a fuller life. I think you can actually live a greater life, not fearing death itself. So,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, Susan, it's been an absolute pleasure. Speaking to you today.
Likewise.
Viewers, you can learn more by visiting naturalburialassociation.ca. Support our brothers and sisters in Canada. There's a lot of great opportunity, and if there's anything we can do here at the Global Green Burial Alliance to pave the way or help make that path a little easier for you, always
Oh,
lean on us. We're more than glad to do it.
thank you, Ed. Thank you. Thanks.
You're, you're very welcome. All right, everyone. Ed Bixby here from the Global Green Burial Alliance, and this was Spotlight Now.